Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you very much for this very kind introduction, and also thank you for inviting me to be part of this event, which I really think is very crucial at the time we are living. Welcome everyone for taking the time to be in this workshop, for actively contributing to it, and participating also in the discussion. I will just very briefly use the first couple of minutes of this event to say a few words about ESPON, because I think normally in these type of workshops we have typically stakeholders that are not necessarily that acquainted with what ESPON actually is, what we do, and why it can be useful for you. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is obviously very complex, but is trying to give you a nutshell idea of what we do at ESPON. So ESPON, that is the European Territorial Observatory Network, and we've been working since 2002 to conduct research projects on be it pan-European level, sometimes also on more geographically focused level, to analyze a really diverse scope of topics, all related to spatial development, territorial development and policies. And what we do there is we gather data, create also partially new data, indicators, tools, methodologies, and obviously with that we set up and continuously also further elaborate and expand a vast pool of expertise that we then provide really to everyone out there. So all our results are publicly available on our website, where you can find then evidence that usually really intends to serve policy making, so that is addressed at policymakers on all levels of governance really throughout Europe. And through our work, we've also managed to establish both a network of researchers across Europe, some of which we've worked with extensively over the years, some of which are still quite new to ESPON. We've also established a network of national, regional and local stakeholders that have worked with us together. And this is what we've been doing and what we are still doing now and continue doing in the next program period. Next slide, please. So now today, this event is one of our outreach activities, which we use to make our results and our work really more known, particularly to folks like some of you working on regional, local level, because that is where we often really see that ESPON is maybe a bit far away for them, and where it's not that well known, whereas we believe that our work can really also be equally useful for regional and local stakeholders. So peer learning workshops like the one we have today on greening tourism, with a particular focus on tourism in Ireland, should ideally help you to, first of all, in the first slot, get some information of important work that we've done, be it either specifically on tourism, which Bernd Schuh will talk about in a couple of minutes, or on aspects concerning green infrastructure and ecosystem services, which obviously play a key role when we're talking about a more sustainable tourism and greening tourism, which is something that Gemma will be talking about in her intervention. And based on these interventions and presentations of ESPON evidence, we then hope that there can be already some reflection from your side on how you can really make use of this evidence and of these results. There is then a second slot where we then shed a particular focus really on Ireland and what is going on there in relation to all the thinking around sustainable tourism. And then in a last slot that is moderated by David Kelly, our Irish MC, so monitoring member, excuse me for the jargon, a monitoring committee member for Ireland. He'll be moderating this session with local stakeholders to speak about your efforts really in kind of transitioning tourism towards a more sustainable and greener approach. Next slide, please. Now I've compiled a list of some of our projects, ESPON projects, that I believe can be quite interesting for all of you working in tourism or working with tourism related aspects also. This is a non-exhaustive list, so these projects go as far back as to 2004, where we were looking at the territorial trends in relation to the management of natural heritage, which heritage, be it natural heritage or cultural heritage, where we had another project on then 2 years later, are obviously very important elements when we're talking about tourism. There's the Attract project that particularly looked at the attractiveness of regions and cities, both for residents but also for visitors to these regions. Then we had a project on the territorial potentials for a greener economy, which, although it dates back to 2014, certainly still has very, very important takeaway messages included. Also, when nowadays we're looking at trying to find ways to turn economy into a greener business. Then I would like to mention also a project that was specifically focused on the Alpine macro region, and that was about setting up, developing with stakeholders really from the Alpine region, spatial perspectives for the Alpine area, and that certainly also looked at tourism as one of the key economic sectors in the Alpine region. Greta, I'm not going to say much about it because Gemma will talk about Greta in more detail just after me. Next slide, please. Then we had a project Bridges that looked at the very different types of territories that we have throughout Europe with its vast variety of specific types of regions, so bit coastal regions, inner peripheries, mountainous regions, islands, you name them. So all of these were analyzed, and we believe that this is also something that can be really valuable for you when thinking about greening tourism. We had a project that only really just that we only just closed last year on maritime spatial planning and land sea interactions, and there were also a couple of case studies that particularly looked at coastal tourism, cruise tourism also, and the environmental impacts of these types of tourism. We've worked on heritage again, also during the current program period, and then tourism, the project that Bernd will be talking about also in a couple of moments. Next slide, please. Before I come to an end, I would like to mention here an activity that we're currently working on. Well, it's an overall kind of broad activity with smaller activities that we will be running, and that we call ESPON on-demand services. And what we're doing there is we offer to each country that participates in the ESPON program some really customized services, so tailor-made services that can be really useful for that specific country and stakeholders there. And we're trying to, with that kind of work, we're trying to respond really to specific changing and short-term policy needs, be it that there is a need for data and respective visualization, that there is maybe a need for a very specific case study that can be derived from a previous ESPON project and the methodology that was used there. And I believe that the workshop today on greening tourism with specific focus on Ireland can maybe be a first step in generating some ideas for specific ESPON activities that we could offer to Ireland. I know that one of my colleagues has been in touch also with David Kelly to to have a chat about that. So maybe this can be helpful also in that process, because we'd certainly be delighted to further help Ireland in offering some useful services to you. Next slide, please. And I'll keep it there for the moment. Of course, if there are any questions whatsoever in relation to ESPON, what we do, then please don't hesitate to either pose the question or also to get back to me. But I think the focus should be clearly now on the specific topic of the workshop today. Thank you very much.